Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Leveraging Organic and Paid Social Media webinar. Thanks to those that have returned from the last webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago that was very focused on SEO at the time. We thought it would be a good chance to jump in for those returning, and obviously for new guests today as well, and just talk a bit about social and the learnings that we're seeing. That, I mean, there's so much, obviously, so much change at the moment for all of us that social is an area that's been impacted massively by it. I mean, usage is up 30–40%. It sort of makes sense. More people are sat at home. So we thought it was a really good chance and a good topic to cover. So as we go through the presentation, there's going to be various slides which talk about best practice, talk about some areas that we've noticed other businesses are really managing to thrive within this COVID-19 situation. And I mean, look, you know, as a business owner myself, we understand that right now it's a really tough time to be in business. And from from a business owner perspective, most definitely, from an employee perspective as well, there's a lot of uncertainty. But with digital marketing, I think the beauty is there's a real opportunity at the moment to utilize and harness the power of it to keep pushing forward. So that at the end of all of this crisis, we've got something really tangible to push forward with. So Luke Tobin, Managing Director and founder of Digital Ethos as an agency. We've now been going for about 6.5 years. We've grown rapidly over that period of time. Last year, we were awarded as the UK's fastest growing digital marketing agency. There's 22 digital consultants within the business, and we focus very much on performance marketing. So that's things like SEO, pay-per-click, social media, all the different facets of marketing that sit around those different disciplines. But we also have a web design and development department as well, which helps quite often with technical elements that we might need from a marketing standpoint. But also we build about 40 to 80 websites a year, depending on the year. So I think our sort of point of difference as an agency is that we very much focus on relationships and becoming an extension of your core team. So rather than a lot of agency relationships are very much siloed into an account manager or a deliverable person within a business, there's often quite a disconnect between the two parties. We've really tried to bridge that gap and act really as an extension of the core team, and certainly that's helped us with our growth and the retention to date. Pre-COVID-19, our sort of retention rate was sat at about 90%, so hopefully that goes some ways to explain who you're talking to. Some of the brands that we've worked with, a lot of household names here, of course. Our services range for anything from strategy through to full campaign management. So I mean, I think the beauty of the way that digital is, if you understand the process and the formula for success, you can actually marry that across to any industry. So we currently service about 35 or 40 different industries. You know, we don't niche in any one particular, because the process, if it's delivered correctly, is workable across any industry. So please feel free as we go through this to join our conversation, hashtags or handles. These are all the Digital Ethos ones within the various platforms. The microphones are all muted automatically now. If you want to say something or there is something to add, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. We've also got a panelist, which I'll introduce shortly, of people that can answer questions from other disciplines as well. At the end of the webinar, we will follow up everything as far as recordings. You'll get a digital recording for this, so you can watch it and replay our voices a few times. But all the useful toolings and bits that we put in there as well will be at your sort of disposal. So introducing the panel, obviously myself, I've now done the intro. Rachel Holy joins us as our social media consultant. You'll be hearing from Rachel shortly around organic social and the best approach for organic social. Callum Howarth joins us as a PPC consultant. Callum's got a wealth of knowledge when it comes to pay-per-click and paid social, but also paid Google ads, etc. as well. So if there are questions later that you want to talk about the PPC or the paid side, Callum's here to do that. Our next session after this social one will be very much paid focused as well, just to give you a bit of a sort of spoiler alert for the end of the presentation. Jasleen as well joins us as PR and content. Jasleen's got a wealth of knowledge as well when it comes to paid social, so she's going to cover the paid section. So we're really breaking up today, so you hear from 3 different experts, and then obviously the panel at the end to answer questions includes Callum. So we're talking about COVID-19, we're talking about, you know, what opportunity is there. There's lots of negative press. You know, we hear things like the economies might shrink by 35% if this carries on till June, or lockdown carries on till June. There's not going to be a cure for a year and a half. All these things are very easy to get caught up in. I think what we'd like to focus on today are sort of the positives, or the opportunity, if you like. We're big believers that there is opportunity in adversity, and whilst a lot of your competition will be retracting at the moment, in fact we know they are, it's a time to push forward, so that when the dust settles and we do come out of this, there's a chance for you to really thrive and push ahead. And it's very rare that an opportunity, which in some ways this is, comes along where you can push ahead of the competition, where they're not running at full pace as well. One thing we've noticed in our own business is, we've increased our own marketing efforts. Sounds a bit bizarre as a marketing agency, but you're always busy. We've increased our own marketing efforts, and we rank nationally for SEO about 500 position 1 to 3 terms. We do really well anyway, but in the last 4 weeks, since we've invested more of our own time, our rankings, our results have shot up. So there is something to be said, and I think the only reason that's happening as quickly as it's happening is because the competition are falling back. We've probably been more active than ever on social media as well, but we're being really realistic and empathetic about the types of posts that we put out. We're not just sticking to a schedule of posts. We're really thinking about, okay, well, what is on topic? Let's understand what people's fears are, what we can do as a business to empathize and work with the current situation as best we can. And I think just offering value is important. Hopefully things like this webinar that we sort of do these sessions for free, and obviously a lot of time goes into them. It's a sort of day or so of planning for a couple of people, and then we deliver them, and there's all the follow-up and everything else. So it's time, it's resource, but it's something that we really want to do to give back. So it's thinking a bit outside the box of what could you be doing that would really add a bit of extra value that that could help either society, community, or your customers. And the one thing we do say is, whatever you do, don't stop social media, don't stop SEO. We've had a lot of customers that have reduced spend on PPC and paid ads. Totally understandable, in my opinion, because there has been an element of reduced business search depending on your industry, but also the cost of paid ads at the moment is at a 10-year low. So you're actually getting a real discount. Someone referred to it the other day as similar to the stock market. The stock market fell 30-odd%. If you'd have bought shares 3 weeks ago at its lowest point on March 16, in probably 90% of companies out there today, you'd have made 20 to 100% of your money on top. So there's always opportunity. You just have to be the brave one that takes the chance and jumps ahead. I've mentioned this already, or alluded to it, but it's not a stop-start strategy when it comes to social. It is an opportunity to keep pushing forward, join in conversations, be relevant, and build a community around your way of approaching the current situation, and spread lots of positive messages. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Rach for the organic social media section. Rach, I'll keep pushing through, so if you need me to, just ask me to change.
Okay, will do. Thank you. Hi everyone. So I'm one of the social media consultants at Digital Ethos, and although things have changed in a matter of weeks with this COVID-19, I just want to share with you a few tips for social media marketers such as yourself. So the first one is being pause scheduled posts. So before this all kicked off, you probably had a full calendar of social media posts that you had all ready and scheduled out and ready to go. However, I think during this time, it's probably an idea to just take a pause and maybe just revisit some of those posts. No way are we saying to cancel and delete all of them, but I think it's just worth just taking a bit of time and revisiting the message that you're trying to say. The ones that you had planned out probably aren't relevant for COVID-19, so it's probably just worth tweaking the message and just making sure that it's relevant for your audience during this time. As you already know, news changes every hour, and so this could alter your message maybe just a little bit or maybe quite drastically. So it's just kind of being aware of what you're trying to say to people during this time. So as well as revisiting social content, it's also a good idea to maybe add a bit more value to maybe what it had originally. A lot more people, now that they're staying at home or socially distancing themselves, people have a lot more time to consume digital content now. So it's probably worth just adding a bit more value, and people have more time to consume that. So why not make the most of it? Also this way, we already know that our lives have changed, whether or not that's from a work perspective or personally. So for example, work hours may not necessarily be the 9 to 5 routine that we're used to. We're sort of more flexible in terms of when we work, or maybe we have childcare. We could be online a lot later. So it's also worth looking at maybe different times of scheduling as well, just to capture the attention at the right time. So these are all just a few points just to take note of in terms of your scheduled posts. The second one is post in real time. So again, whilst you're probably maybe used to using a social media scheduling tool such as Hootsuite, now is probably more important than ever to post in real time and sort of natively on those channels. So this kind of just really adds a human touch to what you're trying to say, especially I think when people need it most. People may not be online or on social media, not all for positive reasons. I mean, this time has caused people a lot of worry and anxiety, so I think it's more important now to just add that human touch to what you're trying to say to your users and your followers. So that way, another good idea is to join in conversation. So rather than sort of pushing a message or you're trying to sell something on social media, take the time to sort of get to know your audience more on a personal level, and sort of collaborate more with your users. And that way, you're more likely to get a response and engagements from them. I mean, it will be just like sort of talking to a friend on social media, for example, sort of really add that personal touch to what you're trying to say. Now's also a good time to sort of take part in a bit of social listening. I think before this all kicked off, we were probably more occupied with getting as many messages out as possible and sort of sell. But now is more about sort of like, what is your audience talking about, or what is your competition talking about? And when are they talking? It's more about sort of getting more involved in the conversation rather than just trying to do your own thing. A lot more people now are on social media, as we've already spoken about. So it's sort of getting to know what they're posting about, what is grabbing their attention, and what do they need help with the most. Another part of this as well is researching trending topics. So you're probably already aware of some anyway, just from being on social media yourself, but also use those platforms to see what people are talking about, and using those hooks to expand your reach. So obviously, hashtags is a good way to hook onto this. So things like hashtag stay at home or hashtag social distancing, and just taking part in maybe what society is. So maybe just bring it down a level or two so that you're really part of the conversation. And also another important part is to not rely on sort of Facebook or other social media platform algorithms. So similar to Google, it was quite easy to get to know sort of like the ways on how social media platforms prioritize certain posts, or you can know sort of how that algorithms work. Before this all happened, it was probably easy to sort of get to know it and so that you find out when and what is the best to post. But now algorithms haven't really had a chance to catch up on this new reality. So I think really the best way to sort of get to know what works for you best is trusting your own research and your own findings. Obviously, don't disregard the algorithms altogether, because they're still working in the background. But because of this, it's more getting to know what really works for your business on sort of like a personal level, as I was speaking about before. So with all of this in mind, I think the key takeaway for this is to tweak your post to ensure that your message and schedule fits what's currently happening. So that would be a good start. Point number 3 is to prioritize conversation over clicks. So again, as I mentioned, before coronavirus sort of hit the UK, business was as usual, and maybe your key priorities were sort of driving traffic to your site or encouraging clicks, and sort of leading on to those conversions, whether it's a purchase or a form submission or an inquiry or whatever it might be. But I think nowadays, especially for organic social media, it's definitely conversation that is key. So moving away from sort of clicks and sessions and conversions and more focusing on sort of engagements, what value you can offer your audience is definitely more important at this time. Content should drive chat and amplification. So whereas people's sort of spending habits has definitely taken a hit at the moment, sort of your brand recall and your brand exposure is definitely more important. So the more you make yourself known, the better at this time. When this is all over, you will be the one that will be remembered above your competition. So definitely prioritize this for now. And then conversation is absolutely free. So you can't really put a price on that, especially during this time. Again, people, they're looking for entertainment, or they're looking to be cheered up, or they're just looking for a new sort of thing to get into. So it's really good idea to sort of make the most of that and lean into it. So leverage your community. It's all about fostering that and making the most of it. So as we've already said, this social distancing and staying at home means that a lot of people are spending more time on social media, some for positive reasons, others for negative reasons. So it's really key just to be mindful of that. It's quite a worrying and sort of like anxious driving time at the minute. So it's probably best to just keep aware of how people might be feeling at the time and how that message is going to be portrayed by them. Having said that, again, a lot of people are wanting to be educated. Like for me, for example, I'm sure a lot of you are, we've got a new sort of like new time to sort of find out like new things to learn, or you want to take up a new hobby or read a new book, for example. So it's really good time to offer sort of like more valuable educational content. So that could be guides, or it could be white papers, or whatever your industry might want to offer. During this time, people have a lot more time and willingness to sort of like new learn things, and it's always good for brands to support curiosity and personal development during this time, where people might, you know, if they can't go out and go about their daily lives as we used to, we may not be feeling the best. And so if we bring sort of like that sense of development back to home, and that's going to really help people get through this time. And then obviously when we get through on the other side, companies will be able to bounce back a lot easier, as people have already instilled that trust in you during this time. It's also a good idea to make the most of your fellow employees, influencers and followers. So you can kind of see you all come together, these different groups of people, and also use user-generated content as well. A lot more people are now posting what they're up to, what book are they reading, what they're cooking for dinner tonight, that sort of thing. So despite it may not be relevant for your industry or what you're trying to sell or whatever, it's always good to just sort of engage with your users that way. Again, it brings that human touch to what you're trying to say to your audience as well. And also check in on them and, you know, ask them how they're doing. It really brings home to sort of like putting a person behind your brand. And I think that's what people are really looking for during this time. So put the spotlight of them really helps with that.
Just to add a little bit to that as well, one thing we've done internally ourselves is for staff, so any of you that have employees, we've incentivized like a learning program in this time. So obviously we've cut out driving time to work, we've cut out lots of distractions throughout the day, which, you know, comes in natural office life. So to try and incentivize how they use that extra bit of spare time, we've put these incentives in that, you know, it's like a sort of they can get a takeaway paid for by the company, for example, on Just Eat or Deliveroo if they present a certificate of learning. So Nick, actually, who's on the call somewhere, has sent me about 4 in the last 2 days. So he's racking up some free takeaways. So I think it's a really good thing. What it means is, again, thinking positively about the situation. At the end of this, I'll have a team that comes back even more knowledgeable than they were pre-corona. They haven't sat at home idle. They've been pushing themselves forward. So at the end of it, we've got something really positive to have as a team pushing forward. I think that's really useful. Thanks, Rach.
That's okay. No, that's a really useful point. I think it's just all about sort of sharing that knowledge as well through a time where people may not feel the best about themselves. So it's kind of really nice to learn new things as we go. So yeah, just to finish on some more tips, I just wanted to share with you some best practices, which obviously would have been eligible before all of this, but I think it's just to be aware that they still apply even now. So things like within your main message of a social media post is to keep it short and snappy. Whilst beforehand, I would probably say do this all the time. But I think we can make a few exceptions during coronavirus. Just again, before I said that people have a lot more time to consume content, so I think you can afford the posts to be a bit longer, especially if they're entertaining or if they're sort of like sort of valuable, or they teach somebody something new. I think you can make them a bit longer in this case. I've had quite a few clients say, oh, is this too long? But I'm just thinking, oh, I think normally I would say yes, but I think at this time you should be fine. But maybe after this all ends, revert back for it just to be a bit more punchy. Second point would be to include tags and mentions where it's relevant. So whether you're collaborating with another brand or you want to mention someone in particular, just making sure that those tags are in your message. This is a really good way of sort of fostering sort of like engagement over the community. So once you tag somebody, they should receive a notification saying so and so has tagged you, and that will encourage them to share the post that you've posted. That's something that I do on behalf of Digital Ethos all the time. So if we're collaborating with another brand, sometimes I even pop them an email just to say, oh, I've mentioned you in this post, which is going to go out tonight at 5 o'clock. If you wouldn't mind keeping your eyes peeled and sharing it, that would be great. Because then if they share it, then their audience will be able to see it too. So it's just kind of expanding the reach that way. It's just something really useful to do. Also in your posts to include a link to your website. So just before where I said move away from clicks and focus more on engagement and conversation, it would still be a good idea to include a link anyway, or from an Instagram perspective to say link in our bio. It's just to capture another opportunity for the user, not to drive traffic, but for the user to find out more information about what you're talking about. So whilst I mean, clicks and conversions aren't a real focus at this time, it would still be a good idea to include one in your post anyway. And then obviously for that link to be accompanied by an enticing call to action. So something that says read now on our blog, or find out more, or discover what else we want to say, and then followed by the link. It's just something that will really encourage people to click through. So speaking of URLs, I think they can get quite long, confusing, and maybe not very pretty. So you've got access to free tools such as Bitly, which will shorten those links. And obviously that will also shave off a few characters for platforms such as Twitter, where there's a bit of a limit. So it's always good practice just to shorten those links using tools such as Bitly. In terms of number of hashtags, this is something that I get asked about all the time. So whereas there's no sort of golden rule that you must follow, I've just put down a few guidelines for each channel. So for Facebook and LinkedIn, I usually use a maximum of 3 or 4. Usually they sort of cut off around then, and your reach may not be expanded as much. There's no sort of like golden rule for this. It's just more of a guideline. Instagram as well, you can have a maximum of 30 hashtags, but again, I usually stick to maybe about 10 to 15. Otherwise it would just might look a bit spammy, but you may want to include a few more that are quite funny, or just for it to look a bit nicer. It's completely up to you. Twitter especially, I keep up to a maximum of 2. That's just seems to be best practice, or really it's just getting to know what works best for your business. So it's always good just to keep an eye on your metrics depending on how many hashtags you use. And again, it's the same for image dimensions. Again, these are just lines. It's just to make your posts sort of fit in with what looks best, and you don't want to have to get your users to click on an image to see the full width of it. So if you just keep within these pixelated dimensions, these are best for each of those channels. But again, I think in the tools and resources slide at the end, there's more information on all of this anyway. So now moving on to the best stories that we've seen. Obviously, most people are on social media, so you've probably seen these already, but these are just a few of the best ones that we've seen so far. Ones especially that are just quite sort of like instilling positivity in such a worrying time. So as you've already probably taken part in the clap for NHS carers and key workers, again, this is just everywhere. So it may have started as something small on Twitter, but now it's on all social media networks. It's on YouTube, it's on the news. It really just shows you sort of like the the power of social media and what it can do. So obviously you can use the hashtags clap for NHS, video yourself. Everyone's doing it. It's now sort of like a charity initiative. Just speaks for itself basically. So that's sort of like the first one that came to my head when I was thinking about the best ones. Supermarkets as well are doing their bit to support all their communities. Obviously, when it all happened so quickly in a matter of a few days, people just weren't sure about, you know, what should they do when you want to go shopping, or people are panic buying online. So I really felt that supermarkets kind of deserved a shout out in terms of getting together, sort of like what are they going to be doing to support us in terms of exclusive hours, or how are they going to get online slots, sort of what guidelines do people follow when they go shop in store. So again, they were just using organic social media to sort of like reach the majority of their customers, and obviously making it as stress-free as possible. And sort of really easy to understand what needs to be done. So I just felt like these ones were super clear, and obviously just making the whole experience as safe as possible for their customers, and social media is just a really good way to reach people for that. Deliveroo as well. So whilst you probably noticed that a lot of takeaways and restaurants have closed during this time, Deliveroo kind of strove ahead. So I think you probably noticed that they've launched their own sort of contactless delivery. So obviously, whilst they handed food over to you when it arrived, but now they'll just drop it at the bottom of your drive or at your doorstep, just to avoid sort of the risk of spreading coronavirus. But in particular, they started a hashtag Here to Deliver initiative. So whilst the company is doing this as well, but Deliveroo are striving to deliver 500,000 free meals to NHS workers. And then also customers have donated so far, probably more now, £150,000 to the NHS. So again, just using organic social media here just to deliver that message to everyone who should see it, basically. So again, it's just instilling some positivity during this time as well.
I think the important thing with these examples is a lot of you will be asking how it relates to your businesses. I think what's important is to look at these best practice examples and think about what could you be doing in the community, what could you be saying, how could you be getting involved in these conversations. I saw a really nice news story, I'm sure most of you have seen it. A gentleman, ex-forces, he's 91 years of age. He started off walking after a new hip replacement, walking back and forward in his garden. He said he was going to do 100 laps for £1,000. And I think as of this morning, he's raised about 16.5 million. It just shows the power and the reach of social media. And whilst you might not be one of these super brands, you can certainly harness the same methodology to get performance from your own social media. Just get involved with the conversations, do something to support the community, and it will go a long way towards that.
Perfect, thanks, Luke. So I think we may have skipped Google, if you wouldn't mind going back one. There we are. Okay, thank you. So yeah, Google, obviously the biggest search engine on the planet, are obviously doing their bit. I think even since I made this slide, I think since we found out that's going to be for another 3 weeks, the lockdown, they've updated their coronavirus sort of features on Google. So if you, I think Google Coronavirus UK, it comes up with a whole new features of what to do if you think you have symptoms or what to look out for, social distancing rules, the latest news and that sort of thing. So if you give that a go, it's really insightful to see. But just some of the examples I've seen as well as how to support small businesses and how to let your customers know. They're obviously on the back of Clap for NHS as well. Do the 5 and help stop the coronavirus. It's just little things like that. So really informative things which you could probably do for your customers as well. But just a little fun thing that I spotted was obviously the Tiger King documentary that was on Netflix the other week, well still is, but was released the other week. They created sort of a tiger augmented reality filter on their Google Lens, which I just thought was quite a funny thing. And again, it's just you can spend a lot of time sort of being informative and serious about this, but also don't forget that people just need to see something positive and fun and entertaining every now and again. So don't forget that. Which leads on to nicely TikTok as well. I think it just started off as a few celebrities just posting an Instagram video of them doing a silly dance. But then actually it's just taken coronavirus by storm. So now TikTok is like the main platform to do this. So whilst it was just a few celebrities, now it's just the general public are doing it all the time. I think I've seen about 3 videos of people doing it this morning. So I think it's just something really nice where people have managed to hook onto and sort of just spread the sort of the fun side of things, I guess. And also what I find quite touching is obviously people like paramedics and the NHS key workers are doing it. They're sort of like risking their lives, but still finding the time to sort of spread this sort of content, which is just really nice to see. And I think that's it for me from an organic side of things. Thank you.
Cool. I'll take over now. So we'll come on to just paid social media, and hopefully we'll have some questions for you at the end. I guess the main overall theme here is to really maximise budget that you're spending to continue your social media. So let's have a look. Some top tips that we've come up with. Using this sort of time effectively, it's a great use for yourself or team members to get creative and use some different tools such as Canva for graphics and Promo for video. They have free and paid options, so you can use these as much or as little as you want to kind of improve content. And they're also a great resource if, for example, limited availability is there from graphic designers and things like that. So if you need to turn something around quite quickly, they're really good tools which you can use. Another great area for paid content is any user-generated content. So kind of echoing what Rachel's shown you previously, any user content that has got a really good story, a positive message, can absolutely be supported with some paid budget to give it further reach and maximum exposure, especially if it's something that's really well deserving. Next, we would recommend that you kind of alter your messaging. So if whether it's a service message, a delivery message, even if it's a case of that you're not able to deliver, but you'll have an update in coming days or coming weeks, it's still worth putting that out there so that your messaging and your information is factually correct and you're kind of giving your customers the best possible update that you can. There's no harm in looking at past moments of crisis for guidance. Although we've never been in this particular situation before, you may have been in similar sort of crisis scenarios where it's still worth updating any paid marketing messages with those important communications for your customers. The other important couple of things here, which the last 2 points can probably be grouped together, but it's really important to reach your users where they are now. And if you have got any public locations or any geo-targeting going on in your paid advertising, it's probably best to kind of review it or switch it off if you haven't already, given that obviously a lot of us are now at home. Either that money could be reallocated into something that is performing very well, or kind of paused and held back for when we're ready to go back to public locations again. And just kind of continuing on with a few more, and as Rachel had said as well before, any positive or entertaining campaigns that are happening within your business, and this can be down to an employee level as well. So if there's somebody in your team that's doing something positive, either giving back to the NHS or just doing something within their community, that's really great content to pay for as well. Or if you have a product or service that is available, and whether it's an essential or a bit of a consumer goods that people might want or might need, there's no harm in still supporting those messages through paid. But while you're doing this, be aware and be courteous. So remember that users don't choose to see your ads, they may be served them, and your messaging will need to be kind of holistic and general across all situations and circumstances at the moment. Another good tip, just to show that you're conscious of what's going on at the moment, is to change your logo on social media and proactively display it. And advertise any useful content and resources. So this could be white papers or guides. You may be able to provide information or advice about what happens when people return to work or when lockdown is lifted, and that is something that people will already be looking for now. So if you can get ahead of the game, it's great to kind of get that content and push it out there. And probably one of the channels that we'd recommend using that white paper and guide information for is LinkedIn. So there are some statistics which we can probably share with you around the increase of use on LinkedIn in recent weeks, and that will probably continue. So if you have got useful content like that, that's probably a good place to start. But also, as Rachel mentioned, there are plenty of other platforms that are on the rise. So Spotify, because people are at home and tuned into listening to music. And actually it's quite cost effective, so not as pricey as people may think, and also TikTok as a way to kind of reach new channels and audiences. So looking specifically to social media ads then, we have provided some statistics of what we've seen. Images and videos, as I'm sure you've all seen, of people washing their hands has actually increased by 600% and will probably continue to do so. So if you have a product or brand, or you have a message that's strong and relating to this, then it's worth pushing that out. Use of the face mask emoji has tripled, as have probably some others, but this is quite relevant. And if you can include it in any of your comms, it's worth just doing that as well. Images and videos of people interacting with each other has dropped 30%. So this is really important if you have a good or service that requires kind of face-to-face interaction or communication, or even if it's people in their workplace. So just be mindful of any adverts that you've got out at the moment that may have kind of old photography, stock photography, etc., because they probably won't resonate with your audience at the moment. So if you're in a position to either use one of the tools which we've mentioned, such as Canva, to update some of your imagery and update your advertising, then absolutely do so and save these for when we're ready to interact again. The travel industry has cut spend by 50% across paid adverts. We don't know at this stage whether, when or where that will be reinvested, but we can imagine that's going to come back in full force, which is great. So it's just a way to show you that different industries are reacting in different ways. And some of the big brands such as Hershey, Coors, and KFC have completely kind of halted their advertising to avoid any negative associations with the spread of coronavirus. So it will be interesting to see what they come back with when we're ready. But it's not all doom and gloom, and we have seen some really good, strong campaigns so far, so we wanted to share some of these with you. Nike, as you'd expect, they have come up with a campaign which is play inside and play for the world. So they've called upon some of their biggest influencers who are naturally sharing their content, and this is making the most of the space that you have around you inside your house, but doing it as a community.
Just to add to this as well, we've seen so much, so many certain industries have really spiked during this time. So obviously home workout equipment, anything that's related to weights, even online sort of yoga sessions or whatever, the search trend is absolutely through the roof. So if you have a business or you service a business that is relatable to anything like that, the trend is massive. So if you're getting involved in conversation, using the right hashtags, you can really sort of piggyback off the back of that. So there's a lot of opportunity in these. Again, going back to what I said before, we've used the big brands in this presentation just so you've got a point of reference that we all know. But to make it relatable to your business, what we need to do is sort of really drill into, is there something in this or within your business where you can pull out some learnings from it and really adapt it for your own marketing going forward. And we've got a couple of brands we work with which focus very heavily on the fitness industry, and off the back of this, you know, we've been able to really advise them on some best practice ideas, and their reach of their posts is up 2 or 3 times over where it's been historically, just because they've been smart with how they've used the trend and the upward lifting trend to really heighten their own marketing.
Thank you, Luke. Another campaign from IKEA, so just very similar to what Luke's saying. If your product, service or offering is anything relating to staying at home, whether it's decor, furniture, anything kind of relating to consumer goods at home, then again it's a good opportunity and some learnings here. This is just playing on the fact that you I guess a bit on the DIY angle, but staying at home and staying safe as well. And Uber Eats, so similar to Deliveroo, they have introduced a kind of contactless food delivery service, again only expected to increase and continue, but they're putting a lot of paid spend and effort behind this to appeal to as many customers as possible. And a bit of a funny one from Andrex, so very simple as well, but share a square with the shortage of toilet roll or heightened shortage of toilet roll. This is just a really simple message that has got a lot of interaction and has had some paid spend behind it from Andrex. And then Nutribullet, completely different, but on the food side, making use of what you've got at home and helping your Nutribullet can help you to do this. So recipe ideas and all sorts. And then finally, just a few more tips. If you are in a position to be found online, then go for it and continue with that. Equally advertise on social media and on Google, whether you're updating a current message or you're in a position to still continue with your business. This will strive and put you ahead of your competition, so don't be afraid to do so, and be prepared for a bit of bounce back. So whether it's customer comments or just a delay in messaging, but still be prepared to put your message out there. If you can offer any extra support or discounts, this is a great way to kind of keep people engaged and remind them that you're still there as a brand, so that they're ready to come back to you. You could also extend the use of that discount, where you typically might offer it just for a month or a couple of months. Why not extend it out to 3 months or even 6 months, so people have got time to come back and use it. And as the whole kind of presentation is echoed, just be really fluid and adaptable. The news and what's happening is changing every day. So if you're in a position, you've got a team that can kind of do this, then go at it. And be very cautious. Don't make any sort of knee-jerk reactions, because we don't know what's kind of out there. There is still the unexpected and unknown. But it's also a great time to finish your digital to-do list or upskill and train, as we sort of mentioned. So any of those areas that you can kind of complete in this time, or you can allocate to team members, is a great way to do that.
Thanks, Jazz. Great. I'll take it back over from here. So yeah, I think just on that slide, just to sort of finish off, our last session that we did was really focused on SEO, and it's interesting because just 2 weeks have passed, and we've had various conversations with clients since then, and people that were in the webinar. 4 or 5 of them now we're working with and offering some support, coaching, advice, etc. Just by doing that, you know, we've already started to see some positive results, and I think for SEO especially right now, as I mentioned at the start or alluded to, it is a really good time to invest. With paid advertising as well, there's an opportunity there. So I think now is the time to really look at the strategy for the next 6-12 months, really think again about what your goals are. It's certainly what I'm doing, and I think it's something that, you know, as business owners or marketeers, we should all be doing and thinking a little bit outside the box to really push forward in this time. So now we're going to sort of jump into a Q&A in a second. Now on the right hand side of your screen, you'll have a questions tab. Please feel free to pop some questions in there. We'll move to the panel in a second, and we can answer any of those questions that you do have. Now, they don't just have to be social related. They can be on any type of marketing question. Pretty sure we can cover it. So SEO, PPC, social, or anything really that you've got concerns or thoughts over, strategy, for example, then we can start to support with that as well. So just to recap the people, Rachel, social media consultant, obviously Callum, PPC, and Jazz for PR and content. So let's have a look. If anyone has any questions, raise them. There was one that's been sent to me a second ago, which is around, does social influence SEO? And it's interesting, it's a question that we had on the last call as well. And the answer is yes, it does in some ways. So whilst the social platforms are closed platforms, so Google can't crawl them, for example, so Google can't go in and take the information. So Facebook's a great example of that. What it does do is, if you've got a business page on Facebook which is really active, then Google can pick that up, and they see it as what's called a social signal, which basically means that that Google's able to see that you've got credibility, that you're trustworthy, and that then in turn helps with rankings for SEO as well. So that's really a really useful thing to do. So the more credibility you have across platform, the better. Good. Rach, any other questions there on the list?
Yes, so I had one which can be answered from organic and paid perspective. So someone's asked sort of what KPIs and metrics are good to track. So I think from an organic perspective, it entirely depends what the objective of your post is. So for example, if you're wanting to drive traffic to your site, or you want people to read a blog post, then I would say that the measurables that you'd want to keep an eye on would be clicks, and that can be taken from the native platform that you are posting from. And also, if you go on to Google Analytics, again, we can help you through Google Analytics after this webinar, but the metrics that you'd want to have a look at on that would be sort of sessions and conversions. So again, those are sort of like the end tail side of things. If you're wanting to spark more conversation or sort of encourage more engagements, then you'll be wanting to look at your shares and your likes and your comments and that sort of thing. And that can really then be taken offline, I suppose, if you were to sort of start a conversation with somebody over social media, then that can sort of turn into a lead eventually. So that's really from an organic. So Jazz, I didn't know if you had any specific ones for paid.
Yeah, not too dissimilar, but again, yeah, it completely depends on your objective. So if, for example, you're setting up an advert in Facebook or Instagram, just think about the core objective. I think we're in a society where we've moved away from vanity, so page likes and things. It's more about engagement, or if you've got some great content, it could be about video views, but really be clear about this objective and set your advert to that objective in the beginning so you can measure it accurately. I think probably for a lot of the people that we're talking to at the moment, it's about traffic to the website and clicks to landing pages. So those are probably some of the key metrics that I would say to focus on.
Perfect.
Sounds good. There's a question here from Ellie as well saying, how can I convert social media followers into customers? I mean, I guess my answer to that would be that social is about engagement and trust building. So it's really building credibility with that user. So if somebody follows you on social, for example, or is part of your active social network or networks, then it's important to make sure that you constantly build trust with them. I think by doing that, then you have a really loyal captive audience that you can then push promotions to, offers, or some sort of something that they can then obviously buy into and later then convert into a customer. And it's a good question because a lot of customers that we have will often add on social on top of another package. Social as a standalone package is something that that we obviously do, but it's often bundled in with other services. And I think the reason for that is, the really interesting thing about marketing is that there's so many different touch points or attribution points in a journey now to convert a customer, that you need to be running campaigns or having active campaigns on each channel. So nothing should ever be looked at in isolation anymore. Even if we start a pay-per-click campaign for a customer, we'll always audit their SEO and see if there's benefit that can be added there, because there is a connection between the two. Especially e-commerce businesses, one thing that we're sort of pedantic about as an agency is if you're getting a first click through paid, for example, to the website, so that's the first interaction point, has come through paid. Quite often later we'll see there might be 6, 7, up to 15 other touch points through other channels until they actually come through and purchase. So it's incredibly important to make sure that you've got this multi approach to how you're marketing, and then you can convert them. So having all of those channels interlinking is the way to do it. One here from Christina. Thanks for the webinar. Question to you all: what advice do you have for the pharma industry specifically? Yeah, it's an interesting question, and obviously, I guess an interesting space to be in right now. I think more than anything, it's created opportunity, right? I would probably be wanting to do some research, having a look at the industry. We know that obviously anything pharmaceutical, pharma driven at the moment is very on trend, and there is going to be demand and search, and certainly a lot of informational type searches. For those of you that were in the last session that we did, we talked about the different search queries that there are within a user experience on Google. So you have informational, you have transactional, and sort of very, the information ones are very research driven. So I think the key to this is have a look at where the trend is, have a look at the research, and then what would be probably really useful, Christine, and we can obviously work through it with you, I'm happy to do it, is just audit all of that, have a look at what you've been doing, have a look at where the opportunities lie, and then push forward from there. Hopefully that answers it. Callum, do you want to add anything else to that? Do you think from a PPC perspective?
To the pharma specific question? Yeah.
Is there anything if not, don't worry about it.
Probably not, no. I don't think so.
Okay, I think for PPC, what I was thinking there was there'd be a lot of trend data that we could really look at. I mean, I know for a fact I do dabble with stocks and shares, and I know that anything pharmaceutical related is popping at the moment. So there is a lot of trend data to dig into. So we'll have a look at that.
I might just jump in as well, Luke, but potentially from a PR perspective, depending on what your involvement is from a pharma angle, whether you're able to deliver supplies, you're working with another corporation or the NHS or whatever, there's a PR potential there as well, and where possible we'll link in any keywords from any data that we can find through search into your content as well, so bringing it back to the digital PR element.
Perfect. One here from Jenny. Any advice for the education industry? Yeah, I mean, Jenny, it's a tough time, obviously. There's no denying that, and I think that we do have some clients that sit in that category, mainly sort of preschool, nursery type businesses. They are closed. What they've started to do instead is work and offer parents, even parents that don't even have their children enrolled, they've started to offer online free daily end of day sort of catch-ups. So they're giving video sort of walkthroughs. They do a sing-along song, which they do live on Zoom with all the children, which is, I guess it's very much thinking outside the box. And where the owner of that business is really focusing is, at the end of this, if she's been seen to be giving that that sort of extra support, then obviously there's opportunity there for her own push forward. The other thing that's been really great about that approach that they've taken is that it's opened up a wealth of PR opportunities. So there's quite a lot of local and national press that's been interested in that approach, because they're making the use of what is obviously a terrible situation for their business. So there is opportunity in it. And again, happy to look at where you are, what you're doing, where you've been, and really sort of assess on a bit of an audit afterwards. It's completely at our cost, what you could be doing, and try and give you some further advice on that. Hopefully that answers that. One here from Michelle. Thanks for the webinar. We're an independent school, and our social media is focused primarily on the immediate school community. How could we use it to push towards potential new families? Might be one for you, Rach.
Yeah, so obviously during this time, coming together as a community is probably one of the most important things, and social media is a really good way of doing this, especially when it comes to new prospects, or as for your business, new families. I think one of the things that comes to mind immediately for me is to sort of offer content that's tailored towards how you can cope sort of like with families or education at home. So you could be writing sort of blogs about activities that you can do at home that maybe your children can't do at school anymore, and that sort of thing. So it just goes back to what we were saying about offering more educational content rather than that. And then obviously, as Luke has already mentioned, sort of this sort of community driven sort of initiatives are really good from a PR perspective as well. So I think as more as you instill in the community and for new families, the more you do that now, the more memorable you will be and be able to bounce back a lot easier. So I hope that answers your question, but obviously if not, then we can help you further after the webinar.
Thanks, Rach. One here from Nick. How can B2B businesses leverage social? Yeah, it's a great question as well, because it's a question we get all the time, even in good times. Forget COVID-19 for a second. A lot of B2B, it really depends. I think, again, it's about trust. So it goes back to that whole multifaceted marketing element. Depending on what you're offering, it's a trust builder. And if you look at Facebook specifically, they've started to introduce more options now for businesses in general, or business pages in general, so you can build more community focused elements to it, but also you can now follow and have a feed of other businesses that are in your sector, or niche businesses that you want to follow or want to engage with. They get notified when you follow them on there. So that might be something that's another way of you know, starting to follow other businesses that may be prospects, or maybe people that are very relevant to your business, suppliers, whatever it might be, and build out or pad out a bit of a relationship that way. So more than anything, it's trust, but also it's leveraging that sort of opportunity to build more connections as well. Excellent. So that's the end of the questions. Oh, there's one more here actually. Oh, Michelle, thanks, Rachel. Brilliant. So we're going to move just through to the tooling element now, so I can tell you what you get at the end of this session. So tools and reading, some really useful bits in here, some resources that you can go and look at in your own time. Again, if you have questions, just let us know. Hootsuite is one that most people will probably be familiar with. They do offer a sort of a basic sort of, you know, free package. It's a scheduling tool, allows you to schedule, so you can plan out your month. You can look at creating a bit of a content calendar, then having a plan for your schedules. Just make sure, as we mentioned throughout the presentation, that you are making sure that the posts are relevant. So at the moment, I'd maybe only schedule a week or so at a time, or certainly have some flexibility to drop in and do some ad hoc stuff. Facebook has a sort of creative studio, which allows you to be really creative with your posts. Linktree is a great tool or extension of Instagram. So Instagram doesn't allow you to have direct links out of their platform to other websites, but if you install or put the Linktree sort of extension into your Instagram, you can then go out to those other sites. So it's a bit of a workaround, and it works really really successfully. Obviously, make sure you've got tracking set up correctly on analytics. It's unbelievable how many times we see analytic setups and they're just not tracking the right conversion data. You don't really understand what's doing what. Again, if you need a bit of help from us, we can support with that. Canva's great for image creation, promo, etc. There's some blogs here as well at the bottom, a couple of ours and a few really relevant ones from other social sites as well. So what's next from us? Hopefully you found this useful. I know it's hard sometimes from a sort of webinar perspective, you know, we're sort of just, you know, talking at you, but hopefully there's some useful bits in here that you can extract and put into your own marketing. We will send you a full follow-up with a recording, so as I say, you can re-watch it. We'll also send the PDF version of the actual slides. I'll drop you all an email personally as well, so you've got contact. If you want to get in touch with me or any of the team, you can do that. We are offering a free social audit, so, you know, completely at our cost. That sort of goes along with the support we offered last week as far as the marketing support goes. There was a couple of questions after that around current customers versus new customers. So for new customers, we'll do an audit and a strategy creation session, and then have a call with you, go through it. For existing customers, we've already moved more of the team into deliverables, so we've increased the amount of time that we're giving every campaign by at least 2 or 3 hours a month anyway, so it's fair on both sides. But we're also taking this time as a business to revisit every strategy we've ever done, and like we've said, best practice at the moment is for everyone to be doing that. So if you feel like you can't do it on your own, ask us and we'll happily support you with it. You know that process is completely free of charge. We do offer social training workshops as well. We normally do a lot of them face to face, but it could be something that we could do on a webinar based one-to-one. Happy to do that. And you know, if it's half an hour of time, we can do it at our cost. If it needs to be a bigger session with your team, then we're happy to do that as well. So there's opportunity there depending on what you'd like. And then we've got a follow-up webinar in 2 weeks' time. We're doing them every couple of weeks, which is going to be focused very much on paid marketing. We mentioned and alluded to it throughout the presentation that you obviously at the moment the PPC costs, or the costs of advertising, are at an all-time low, 10-year all-time low. So it could be a really interesting one to tune in for. And that is it for today. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you for your questions. We'll follow up shortly on email, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the next session. Thanks so much, and bye for now.